We're human, don't you know? Just like you are. I'm Rachel Woods, HRBP turned HR coach. And in this series, I explore the technicolor spectrum that is life in HR with folk in the know, those that have been there, bought the t-shirt, and are happy to share their experiences for us all to benefit. So grab a cuppa, get comfortable, and we'll crack on. I'm delighted to welcome Sue Ingram today, and she's the author of How to Fire Staff So They Thank You. She's a supporter and coach to ambitious CEOs and managers that are frustrated by people disruptions. She specializes in difficult conversations, and what I really want to talk to her about is what I wrote in my notes when we first met. I wrote the words, "You're going to balls it up, and that's okay." But now I'm not sure whether it came from me or Sue. So that's where this discussion is going to start. After a big We're Human welcome to you, Sue. Hello.
Hello. It's lovely to be here this afternoon with you, discussing the fact that we are definitely going to muck it up from time to time.
And hopefully not the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to allow ourselves to do that, because that is being human. When you put out this thing, I'm going to do this podcast, we are only human. I thought, yes, because that's what I do a lot of work on in my coaching and in my training and in my difficult conversations training, management training as well, is the fact that we're only human.
Yeah.
And we will make mistakes. And there's an old saying that if you want to double your success rate, you need to double your failure rate.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because success and failure go hand in hand. You know, you want improvements, constant improvements. You want to make changes. Well, changes are forced on us, aren't they? Because the world is changing so fast around us. We're being forced to make changes. And so we go for something that we think is going to work, but we don't know for certain. And so we will fail. And you can't learn something new and go for something new without failing.
Yeah, that's where the learning happens, isn't it? In the main.
That's where the learning is. But
yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Before we get into too much of the meat of this, there is something that I do ask all my guests before we get started. So I'm hoping you're not dodging the question knowing it's coming. But what brought you to HR? So before all your work as a consultant, before your work employed by as yourself, what got you into the world of human resources in the first place? Because the roots in have been varied and wonderful, to be fair.
I didn't do well on my A-levels for whatever reason, didn't get to university. So my mum said you can always earn a job as a secretary, learn how to type. And she was quite right. So I learned how to type. I then started temping in London, and I did lots of temporary contracts all over the place in London. Some of them, I went back many times to the same place, and some of them were 2 weeks, 3 months, 4 months, that kind of thing. And I got to see the inside of organizations and how they worked or didn't work, and what was the difference. And it had nothing to do with the quality of the artwork on the walls or the fact that they had free biscuits in the kitchen. It had nothing to do with that. There was something going on that meant I walked into a tatty, untidy office, and yet it was humming. It was humming. It had energy about it. And then I walked into other places that was all very, swishy and thick carpets, and it didn't hum. What was the difference between these two places? And I got really fixated on it. I also, at the time, was uber critical of managers and organizations and those in authority. And I thought, how can they get it so transparently wrong? Yeah, I was a bit of an evangelist. I mean, I was in my 20s. That's what you do when you're in your
idealistic
20s.
And
yes,
and vigor, and
I'm going to change the world.
Take on the world.
I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change the world. So I distinctly remember thinking, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm going to, yeah, seriously. I'm going to go away and train and go into HR and get into the middle of this whole sort of situation and fix it.
Grab it by the shoulders and give it a good shake.
Yeah, I wanted to fix it. And so it was at the end of my 20s, beginning of my 30s, I went off, I did my CPD qualification, and from there, I got my first job in HR, which was a stunner. It was an IT company in the city, very fast-paced, which was just brilliant. I mean, I learned everything in that job, really. It was just so good. Partly because the boss I was working for was a sports psychologist. So he was applying psychology to the workplace. And he never did anything because that was the expected way to do it, or that's what everyone else did, or that's what the rule book, but you know what I mean, the best practice book.
The management rules.
Said that was what you're supposed to do.
Don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
Guide to management, yes.
Exactly. He did it because it worked. Because that was going to get us the result that we wanted. Or at least he figured that was the best chance of getting the result we wanted. And I learned so much from him. I mean, we didn't have job descriptions. He said, what's the point? He said, they're out of date in 3 months. There's no point.
Yeah.
And it's true. And I've seen some job descriptions which have taken a lot of effort to produce and actually don't say anything at all.
No.
Because it's going to be out of date in 3 months. So,
or at best it's a to-do list and that's it.
Yeah, it's a sort of vague kind of document that because you can't be too detailed because it's going to be out of date in 3 months. Particularly in IT, particularly in fast-paced environments, there was absolutely no point. And so, that was just one example. So I learned a huge amount, and I'm still on this quest. What makes a workplace, a team, hum?
Yeah.
What gives it that energy?
Yeah.
I ended up specializing in difficult conversations because this was before lots of cuts happened. I think people have become much better at it since then, but I'd be talking to senior leaders and they'll be saying, I can't make this desired, needed change because Fred won't like it. And I'm going, who's Fred? Thinking Fred was a board member that we needed to influence and educate. No, Fred was someone in their team. I'm going, are you holding back a decision, a change that you know needs to happen because Fred doesn't like it? I'm going, well, he'll create, he's so negative, he'll create so much fuss and on. I'm going, and to me, it was so easy to try and inspire Fred, get Fred to join the party, and if Fred doesn't join the party, to move them out in some form. So easy.
Amazing how much power we give the Freds, isn't it? Amazing how much power that managers offer up to the Freds because they don't want to have that conversation. B, don't want the negativity spreading to the rest of the team because Fred might be quite influential with the team, maybe, or just is going to say things that will have the team rattled, whether they're true or not.
Yeah,
they'll do enough to rattle everybody else.
Actually, in my experience, the Freds haven't got that much power. Everyone's going, oh, okay, Fred, to their face. Oh, yeah, you're right, Fred. Because Fred's a difficult person and they can't be bothered with the hassle of arguing with Fred because Fred is, So they go, yeah, you're right, Fred. And then they walk away. Fred thinks he's got the power. But actually, in my experience, when you let the Freds go, the team goes, oh, thank God for that. Thank God for that. We can get on with stuff now.
The weight's lifted. Or if Fred does have the power, like you say, it's having that conversation, get him on board because then he's influencing in a positive way. It's make him feel loved and part of the decision making, and suddenly he's on board.
Yes.
Like, wow, okay.
Yes, so now... yes. And it's very easy to do. You just have to formulate a strategy and carry it out. And it's exhausting trying to lift a team with Freds in it or an organization with Freds in it. You have to create something where the Freds just don't thrive. They just don't exist. They're just not there. It can be done, and it has
not attractive, isn't it? It's make it not attractive to the Freds. They don't want to stay in that, and it's not a case of manipulating them out of the organisation. It's just being honest. This is how things are. Again, at a recruitment stage, you're not even recruiting Freds because they're not interested in that culture, in that style of working, in the working.
Freds are looking for places to work where they can have power with no responsibility. And they can have influence with no responsibility, and they can walk around going, I'm the big I am, but without actually taking, having accountability for actually delivering anything. And if you're an organisation that holds your staff accountable, that you've got a code of conduct, a code of practice, values, behaviours associated with those values, and you reward and recognise against those things, however you may term them, if you've got that in place and everyone's up, everyone's talking positively, everyone's happy, things are happening, you will naturally ostracise the Freds. Because they can't.
They'll ostracize themselves, won't they? They will take themselves out of it.
Yes, because there's no vacuum. You're not leaving a vacuum for them to come and carp away at people. You're filling the vacuum with all the positive stuff that you want the team and the organisation to be. And so the Freds just resign, actually. They actually just resign.
Now, we should be very clear, obviously, that not all Freds are built the same. No. Not everyone called Fred is going to behave like this, just to be fair.
There's some very decent Freds out there.
Fair to Freds everywhere.
There's and some of them are
metaphorical conversation about Freds.
Some of them are Frederikas, yes. So, you know, it's and I have been stunned by some Freds in my time where I've started the conversation and they've turned around.
Right.
And suddenly I've got this superb employee and I'm going, my God, where did they come from?
I think I've had similar conversations in the past, and you said, well, what's changed? Said, well, no one's ever asked me. They just assumed I'm not going to like it, so no one's ever actually had this conversation with me, and that's really interesting when you get that. It's like a little light bulb, hallelujah moment.
Yeah. No one has
shocked.
No one has cared enough
to
run the danger of perhaps telling me something that's difficult or upsetting to help me improve. No one's cared enough to do that before.
Well, and never given me the feedback. I had no idea.
Yeah. And if you go into that conversation, not in the sort of, you have done wrong, you are awful, you are dreadful, you know, heavy number. If you go in on the basis of I care and therefore I speak, then you can, literally, I have been stunned. I have had people walk out, go, yes, sir, I'll do it. And they do. And I'm going,
and do you know what? It's reminding me of something my mate Rory Berry, who's quite frequently writing on LinkedIn about staff retention, that kind of thing he specialises in. But ultimately, he was talking about grumpy employees. You know, when you kind of, they're probably the Freds. This is exactly what we're describing. So they're most commonly grumpy because they care so much about where they are. Now, whether that's because they like the fact that they've got, you know, power without responsibility or whatever. But they do actually care about the organisation, and sometimes the grumpiness is coming from that. From that, if you don't ask, you'll never know, right?
I am working with a company at the moment, and there's an employee there who made a mistake. They made a mistake, cost the company money, and they actually said to me, Sue, there's nothing that anyone could say to me that would be more hurtful than what I'm saying to myself right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they were beating themselves up around the head. And consequently, they were walking around in the office looking like the grump, you know, and they were a bit touchy and a bit. And that's when I came in and said, it's okay to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And they went, oh, I said, I know you made a mistake. I know you're beating yourself up about it. There's, you know, I don't need to say anymore because it's clear that you are beating yourself up about this. But it's okay to make the mistake. It's okay. What we need to do now is to learn. What do we need to have in place to ensure this doesn't happen again? Well, in actual fact, there was a great coming together, and there was a new process written, which they absolutely adored. They just went, oh, this is brilliant. This is really going to help me, really. And I spoke with them this week, and it was all about, oh, Sue, this new process is, I'm feeling so much better. I'm clear now. I'm never going to make that mistake again.
Yeah. And the irony is sometimes that companies will pay consultants a huge amount of money to come in and write these processes for them. When actually, if you talk to employees that have made errors, the answers for the process, the design of the process comes out of that discussion. If you bother to have the discussion and don't just throw the book at them and say, bye-bye.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, worst case scenario, that scenario could have gone on. They could have continued feeling really hard, being very hard on themselves, being very sensitive to criticism, very hard. And it could have ended up in a resignation. Eventually, they could have thought, I'll solve this. And we know the cost of hiring. We
Yeah.
know how difficult that job market is. And this person was doing a really good job. It's just that they happened to make a mistake. And the big part of my conversation with them is, you're human. You are allowed to make a mistake. You are allowed to, it's called being human. And we are all the same human. All the same, just human. In actual fact, one of the contributing factors to this mistake being made was they were trying too hard to fulfill deadlines that were demanding, to say the least. So they were dashing to please people, and in dashing to please people, be perfect, they made an error. They forgot to do something, and it cost the company money. And so with this, it's a bit more like, push for the target, obviously, but be a bit more relaxed about it, and be a bit more, do you know what? No, actually, you can't ask for that. You can't ask for that turnaround in 3 days.
Yeah, and it's amazing, isn't it, how many errors we make when we're under pressure. I think you've only got to watch something like The Cube on telly and see a really simple task that somebody's doing, but you put time pressure and visibility and being exposed onto that person. Suddenly, all rational thought goes out the window. That the panic sets in. Our panicked brains don't think that clearly. They're just thinking about get away, avoid, whatever. It's not a rational state of mind. It's funny, something my mum said to me, and she'll really thank me for saying this on my podcast. She said, I can't concentrate when I need a wee, Rach, because it sounds like it's too urgent and there's too much pressure on me.
Yes.
Can't concentrate. Let me go and do that, and I'll come back, then I can talk to you. I was like, that's a really good point, actually. Maybe that's a human thing. When we're under that pressure, as simple as that, very physical pressure, literal pressure in that sense.
Yeah.
Our brain goes to mush at that point. I can't think straight.
And we forget the most simplest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this
physiological and mental.
Yeah. This whole thing about being a manager, being a leader, and working in HR is about gaining the optimum productivity out of our employees.
Yeah.
They're the optimum
having the right structure, having the right performance measures and the motivations and reward structures, and
I mean, hence wellness programs, for example. It's been proven that you invest in mental and physical wellness and you get greater productivity, in terms of retention. I mean, there's so many different metrics you can do to measure it, but basically that's what we're after. It starts, so we can't put endless pressure on people and expect them to be highly productive. Doesn't work. Mistakes come in. Then the worst kind of environment is the mistakes start happening and people start hiding them under the carpets. And they come out 6 months later smelling very bad.
That's what happens when you go into the carpet for 6 months. I'm just looking at this role modeling, and it's you're right, there's a pressure in itself, isn't it, when you feel the pressure to be the perfect role model. And role modeling is not about being perfect, is it? That's the point. The role modeling is being a human being.
Absolutely.
And
the
HR
role model
particularly
is to be a human being.
Yeah. And do you find it with HR particularly, though? People in leadership in HR feel, we have to extol the virtues, we have to extol the values, we have to be right all the time and absolutely on it and be the leading role models for absolutely everybody, and we're not allowed to cock up. And you can. As long as you put your hands up and say, do you know what? I ballsed up.
I cocked up.
This is what
I made a mistake. I mean, I made a mistake. I think I told you when we had our prelim chat, I made a mistake about a month ago, and it was a clanger. I had to really process that mistake. I could easily have fallen into a shame fest. Oh my God!
Pity party and
Here I am, decades worth of experience. And
I let myself have half a day of pity party, and then I have to snap out of it and find a way forward.
Exactly.
You get sucked into that, and it's too easy to stay there.
You don't suck into that, and I did, and I really felt this disappointment in myself come up and everything like that. Then I sat down and I wrote exactly the mistakes I'd made that led me to that. Where had I gone wrong? And boy, it just came off the end of my pen. I knew exactly what I'd done.
Yeah.
And then I immediately wrote what I was proud of about myself. Because I'd identified what I was ashamed of about myself, what I was disappointed about myself in doing. But that's not the true picture. I've done some great work of which I'm very proud. So and one of the first things I wrote about being proud of myself was, I have done this review.
Yeah.
I have sat down and done this review.
Yeah, exactly.
I have sat down in faith. I have sat down and written out what I don't want to repeat again.
I've faced my shame.
I'm learning from this.
I have called it out.
I went down because we're not good or bad. We're in the middle grey. We are brilliant. We can be outstandingly brilliant. And you know those days, don't you, when you just go, oh my God, I rocked it.
On it like a comet today. Yeah, absolutely.
And then there are other days when we just balls it up.
Yeah.
We balls it. It's like, there's not one thing I can touch today that's going to go right. It's just going to be, and sometimes there is an explanation, you fall down with a cold 2 days later and you go, oh, that
was on its way in. Yeah.
Or there's a stressor from home, that you're worried about, or something like that, or you've suffered you've had a shunt in the car, that throws a day off, because you feel jangled, don't you? And like, you can't really settle into it.
Stuff's going on with someone in your orbit that you're worried about without really realizing how worried about it you are. You're distracted.
Or one thing for me, meaning if I'm not on my A game today, I am trying to avoid something that I know I need to do.
Yeah.
And that's what we as humans constantly do.
Yeah.
Constantly do. We would never get any expense claims into our accounts department if our accounts department didn't stand there and say, I'm not paying a penny unless you send me the form.
Yeah, there's a 90-day limit. You have to do it.
Day 89. You have 2 days left, Sue. Send in the form now, or you've lost. Nothing. You've lost your money.
Then you do it.
Then you do it. Then you do it. Because it's like, oh God, it's so boring. Such a boring job. So it's either boring and we're busy on exciting, shiny objects, so I don't want to do that, or we've got a fear around it in some form and we don't do it.
Yeah. And also then there's the guilt. There's that underlying guilt of, I should be doing this, but I'm not doing this. And even if you've not told yourself, you've not explicitly called it out or realized it's even there, it impacts your day until you suddenly realize, yeah, I really ought to do that.
It erodes you.
Yeah.
It nibbles at you. Nibbles. It makes you feel uncomfortable. Even as you're doing the distracting, nice,
something a bit itchy,
pleasurable subject.
Yeah. Something a bit itchy that's you're clouding the nice stuff.
You're not right. You're not right. One of the things that I always want to gift myself the perfect day. I want to give myself the perfect day, and there's certain things that I want in there that make it the perfect day. I have a routine that I do for me. I do morning pages. I don't know if you've come across that concept, but basically I journal in the morning. I write out my feelings first thing in the morning, and most of them are petty.
Right, feelings. Then are your feelings.
But I write them out. It's a stream of consciousness. Forget about grammar, spelling. Just write.
Yeah. Just keep writing. Yeah.
That I find for me that calms me. I'm right. Okay. I know where I am now. I know what I need to do. I have to have some form of exercise in my day. I didn't used to, but now I do. I've changed considerably, but now I do. And I have to do something each day that makes me feel proud.
Okay.
There has to be something in each day that makes me feel proud. So it's either something where I had a conversation with someone yesterday that went particularly well. Yes. Oh, good. I was on form then. Or it would be, do you know what? I didn't want to send that email and I sent it.
Yeah. So this is I take it the thing that makes you feel proud is not so much of I'm planning this because it will make me feel proud. It's a retrospective on what have I done today? Not to quote M people too much, but what have I done today to make me feel proud?
Exactly. Because then I can close my computer at the end of the day and go, yeah, that was okay. That was good. And I was talking about this concept yesterday, actually, with a client. And I was saying, do you know, every day I move forward. there's a saying, isn't there, that if you stand still, you will be left behind. Particularly in the environment in which we're in today, where we have got change just thrown at us from every direction, energy prices, it goes on and on and on. But every day I move forward. I take an action and it's action, not thought.
Yeah.
It's action that moves me forward. So it's the email, it's the telephone conversation. It might be planning a conversation. It might be researching something, but it's something that moves me forward to better. Now, if I do 365 days in consecutive, I will have gone a long way in a year, a long way in 1 year. And I'm beginning to realize these are lessons that I should have learned way back when. Small, consistent, persistent actions deliver the results.
Yeah.
It's not the flashy big stuff. It's not the flashy big stuff.
Yeah, I've just finished recording with a chap who basically applies Kaizen to people.
Yes.
And that's coming out in December or something. Depending on when people are listening to this, it might already be out. Go and listen. But I was talking to Joe, and he talked about exactly the same. The principles of Kaizen. It isn't big changes. It's making these small incremental steps that add together to create meaningful change, to create a meaningful impact or progression, or whatever it is you're looking for. It's making those tiny steps, whether it's a habit, whether it's a thing, or whether it's just, like you say, getting that email out, or being proactive, or writing something down that's really important that you've been thinking about and you need to capture it so you can use it. And it's really interesting to hear you saying, basically describing that without calling it Kaizen, basically. And that's where that's kind of coming from. It's absolutely right.
It's the way we show up every day that makes the difference, and the consistency of that showing up, and the reliability of that showing up, and the humanity with which we show up.
Yeah.
And this whole thing about being productive, and so we must strive hard for what we want to achieve, but let go of perfectionism.
Yeah.
Do not ever attempt to be perfect. If you've got, and many of us have, this old script, this old idea that we have to be perfect, please drop it, because you will never ever reach it, ever.
Exist, does it? And not in human terms. Not in okay, you could have a perfect circle. You want to draw a perfect circle, go and get a protractor. All right, you draw a perfect circle. But in terms of a human action, a conversation, there will be things that go overall pretty well, and it'll be a good conversation.
And you may get,
it'll never be perfect.
You will get tantalizing brief glimpses of it.
Yes, which is a bit of a drug. Let's face it.
yes. There's a little moment of, oh, this is perfection, and then you look around and you think, no, oh my God, it's gone. No.
Don't call it out. Stay in the moment. Don't recognize it as that. Just stay there.
Because there's just
enjoy it while it happens.
And the funny thing is that the more you strive for perfection, the less likely you are to experience those little golden moments. If you relax and go and yes, go for a high standard. Absolutely go for a high standard. You want to be at your best. You want your team to be at your best. You want your organization to be at your best. You are aiming for that. And then it's small incremental changes that get there. For example, try smiling.
Yeah.
Smile. There's someone I know who places disadvantaged people into work. People who have come from a difficult background. Yeah. It's really important work. I mean, it's stunning work. And she placed someone and the placement went wrong. And so she went in to find out what had gone wrong. And she said, lovely, lovely manager. She said, lovely manager. She said, but she didn't smile. Oh. And so she had someone a little bit vulnerable, anxious, very keen to do well. They needed someone to smile. Mm. They needed someone to say, well done. If you want a tip just to take away, just go and smile more at your employees and genuinely say thank you and well done a lot. Yeah. And see what difference just those two things can make. Just those two small things. Yeah. I think you sadly, you may get a look of surprise.
Pivot, what's wrong with you? Why are you smiling at me? You're freaking me out.
Or what are you after?
Yeah, what do you want? What do you want?
No, I'm just saying thank you. That was a great piece of work.
I'm just calling it out. I've realized I don't say thank you enough.
Yeah.
What is wrong with saying that? Saying I've actually realized I don't say thank you enough, and I'm going to start saying it more.
Yeah.
And ultimately, then people might go, "Oh, yeah, do you know what? I don't say thank you very often. I'm going to start saying it more." And before you know, you've created
the ripples in the pond
a
go
trend. You've created
the
a
ripples
whole
in the
new.
pond, and it's not just in our workplaces. When we go into a supermarket, when we walk through a barrier on the tube station, and there's a guard person there, and you just say thank you.
Yeah.
You will be stunned at how people smile back at you.
But it's funny. I can't remember where it was. It must have been something on YouTube or something like that. And somebody was walking through a busy train station, and just every person they passed, they're passing loads of people like coming off the train, people going to the train, and just going, "I love your scarf," or "I really like your skirt," or "Your boots are amazing," or "That suit's really sharp." And people go, "Oh, thank you," and sort of smile, and they'd walk away smiling. Of course, they'd pass people who were also then smiling, and it's viral, it's infectious. And you think, I can't. I mean, I know it'd be weird if everybody was doing that all of the time, but every now and again, drop a few of those in.
There's something very interesting about the fact that biologically we seem to be more prone to look out for, notice, and comment on what's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, what's gone right.
We're wide up for that.
And there's this whole thing about the saber-toothed tiger chasing us, and it's it's more important.
Same chemicals.
Yeah, the saber-toothed tiger is chasing us.
Yeah, same chemicals between an internet troll and the saber-toothed tiger. Our brain, the cortisol and the adrenaline and everything, come flooding through, whether your life is in danger or whether your ego is being damaged.
Completely.
It's just such a poor design of a brain.
Well, we are still animals at our core, with just this massive, great big computer slapped on top.
Yeah, and this bit at the front is really weak and not very strong. There's somebody, I think it's a chap called, I want to say he's called Dalton Kehoe. It's a really funny name. It's just a strange name anyway. But he talks about an elephant and a rider. It's a bit like Steve Peters, the chimp paradox.
Yes, the chimp paradox, which I love.
Human and the chimp, because don't arm wrestle the chimp because you'll lose. You're not strong enough. Dalton talks about don't try and force the elephant into submission because you'll lose. You're not strong enough. So the amygdala and this ancient part of our brain, the animal part of our brain, mammalian bit, is bigger and stronger and emotionally driven and is intent on keeping you safe, rightly or wrongly. And it may not go about it in the right way, but that's what it's intent on doing. And the prefrontal cortex is this weedy little rider that's trying to wrangle the elephant when it's in full amygdala hijack.
Can't do it.
When you're having a panic attack or an anxiety, or you're angry or you're upset or you're emotional, like really heavily emotional, that bit just cannot win. So all it can do is try and soothe and calm and maybe give it something else to do. And so a lot of psychologists have had sort of touch points here and there over the years as well. But often we'll give simple tasks. So drawing something or writing something down, just like the alphabet, or playing Tetris on an old Nintendo, or something that doesn't require a lot of cognitive ability, but just settles the amygdala into something that's non-threatening to do, because it can't do two things at once. It can't both panic and play Tetris at the same time. Exactly. To give it the Tetris, the panic will dissipate.
It's interesting to observe. Do you remember at the beginning of COVID lockdown when we were all panicked because we didn't know what this COVID was? We didn't know how many people were going to die. We didn't know how long. It was stress because we had a huge number of question marks, and the scientists were working like crazy to try and get the answers.
Layered on with freedoms being perceived to being taken away. Yeah, exactly. Locked at home.
We were at our core
running out a loo roll.
We were under threat. We had been told to barricade ourselves in our houses and sit.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to notice because at that time I wanted to paint and I wanted to knit. And isn't that so? It's very good because that actually would tell you what at that point of stress, collective stress, but personal stress, what were you drawn to doing? Because that's good information for you. Oh, when I'm frightened, when I'm stressed, that
calms you.
That's where I go to. That's what I want to do. So not only does it calm you, but it's an indication to you that you are now under stress. One of the biggest problems we've got is that we're working in corporates and the machine rolls forever onwards. Do you know what I mean? It rolls for everyone. And we're in the machine and we're rolling with it and it's fine. And then it rolls a bit faster and a bit faster. And so we go faster and faster. And then we don't realize that actually that stress is beginning to compile upon us. And it's very useful to know what's the sign for you of stress.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Actually, I'd not heard that before, but you're right. I think if I reflect on it now, my husband started teaching himself to make bread. And he was awful at it. Don't get me wrong, he never made a decent loaf, but he really liked the process of kneading, watching it rise, going back, kneading it again, and so on and so forth. I got into, funnily enough, Lego. I've made a Lego bonsai tree. I've got a bunch of
Yeah,
flowers that I got for
yeah,
Christmas. I
yeah.
started putting things like that on my sort of Amazon wish list for like Christmas gifts and the like, because I
Yes.
like because it takes you out of yourself. It makes you focus on something else
Takes you out of yourself.
that you've
And
got
this
instructions
is
for, and you're just following instructions. You don't have to think for yourself while you're
you don't
doing
have
it.
to think for yourself. And what's
Yeah.
lovely is that your husband, he was doing something really good and the outcome wasn't important.
No.
The fact
No, we
that
made biscuits. I got to say, we made some very nice
if
toasty
he stood at the
biscuits.
end and went, oh God, it
Yeah.
failed again, don't know
No,
why. And then he'd
wasn't
go
a
back.
failure. We ate it. It made nice
Yeah,
toasty biscuits for pate. It was
yeah.
not good
Oh,
bread.
I bet toasted up. Oh, delicious. But you know what I mean? And it wasn't important. It was the act of
You're right.
making the bread that was important. And the act of learning to make the bread that was important. And what was I going to say? I was going to say something important. I've forgotten what it was. Oh, I've come back to me. But it's this whole thing. Oh, yes. Too many of us under stress calm ourselves with something that doesn't serve us.
Yeah.
Alcohol, drugs, sex, TV, shopping, gambling,
Chocolate.
work. Work. I'm going to add that one in there.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
We
More
do
work, because that'll solve
We
it.
think, yeah, we do. The amount of work we're doing is stressing us. Doing more work is bound to solve this whole problem. Yeah. And an addiction is the pressure, the call. I have to do something that I know will not make me feel better. Eating and alcohol, you know, alcohol's a bit of a difficult one because until people stop drinking, they don't realize how awful drinking makes them feel.
And things like chocolate, in the moment you feel great, but then you feel guilty, and then you've got the health.
Yes, you see, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. It's the chocolate's not the guilty party. It's how we use it that makes it. So if you go, gosh, I've had a really, you know what, my energy's a bit down. I deserve a treat. And you have a quarter of a bar of some delicious favorite chocolate of yours, and you savor every single bite of it, going, gosh, that was delicious. Oh, that was really, I feel better now. Oh, I really like that. That's healthy use. If you go, this is awful, I don't want to look at it. I know what I'll do. I will mindlessly eat
the whole bar
bag of M&Ms
exactly,
without tasting one of them. Without a single taste.
Yeah.
That is bad.
Same with drinking, isn't it? I'll have one drink to celebrate. Cheers to me. Yay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Actually, if then that turns to half a bottle or a whole bottle, depending on what it is, suddenly that's problem drinking rather than. My brother-in-law actually, he's gone through a lot of kind of these thoughts around drinking and all the rest of it, and he won't mind me sharing this, but he's got this rule now: drink to celebrate, not commiserate. So if he has a couple of drinks, it's to go, yay, something's been good. But if he's in a dump,
in a down mood, because the thing about alcohol, whatever mood you go in to drink, it exacerbates the mood you go in with.
Well, it amplifies.
So exactly. So if you go in happy, it makes you happy. If you go in sad, it takes you down.
Yeah, I've had those moments. I've been in floods of tears after one glass of red wine.
Oh, completely.
And I've wondered why one glass has made me so tearful, just because I've been holding something all day. And I thought to relax, I need this. And actually, all it's done is let it all out. And don't you know, I probably did need a good cry.
In that regard, I don't think that's too bad at all, because
it's not. But if you carry the bottle, that
let's face it, we don't dissolve into. We've had an awful day. We're not going to dissolve into tears at work because it's unprofessional, and anyway. But so we hold it together. We keep the mask on. We hold it together. We hold it together. We go, a friend says, drink, and we go, oh yeah, get into the wine bar, drink one glass, tears. And if you're with a good friend, you can then explain what it's about and
Safe at home with family, and
then process it, and then look at it and then go, oh, this happened and that happened, and then I did that, and then I thought that. And this has left me with this feeling of whatever.
But then you're saying this is it, the processing, and that being an enabler to the processing is really important. Why the experience I had was it didn't, I knew why I was sad. I knew what was bothering me. I'd processed it in some ways. And what I was doing was entering into that pity party space. So actually by having that glass of wine actually made me feel worse. And it wasn't until the next day when I woke up, I only had 1 or 2 glasses, but I didn't have a hangover or anything the next day. But I woke up the next day and just went, what am I doing? That made me feel like
it didn't help.
I'm not doing that again. It's not going to happen.
Processing it, being
Really?
human is
Yeah.
I coached a senior person CEO. Lots of changes going on, lots of stuff going on. And she was at the top of the company and she was alone. She was alone, except she had me. And so I was paid to be her confidant.
Yeah.
A professional confidant. That's how I earn my money some of the time, is to be that professional confidant. And she would come to me and she would vent viciously.
That's what we do as coaches, though, isn't it? We provide that space to let it out.
About
safe.
You won't believe what they said, Sue. Honestly, I felt like swearing into their face. And this was the most, and she would be completely unbusy, completely human, completely real about the frustrations that she'd experienced that week. And I used to time her. I said, how long do you want to stay in this place? She said, 10 minutes. I said, okay. So we found this pattern where 10 minutes at the beginning of every hour session, I say, you've got 10 minutes, go.
Let it out.
Off she would go. The latest story with all the dramatic embellishments you could possibly imagine, because you'd had to be professional, sort of contained, through the week. And then I'd say, finished? 10 minutes is up, finished? Yes, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. Okay, now let's start talking about what we're going to do. And
it's funny, isn't it? Do you find over time that 10 minutes, yes, okay, she might still ask for 10 minutes, but she tends to run out of steam at about 7. And it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. It's almost the better you get at venting, the quicker all the crap comes out.
It is. The less dramatic it is, and the more manageable it is.
Yeah.
This whole thing about being human and we're going to balls it up is really allow yourself to go, oh, I balls it. That was dreadful. That was dreadful. Role model making a mistake for the rest of your team and your organization. I made a mistake. I thought it would work, but clearly now I know it didn't work, or I had forgotten this, or I was unaware of this or that.
It's not just role modeling the mistake, it's role modeling the putting it right, the reflection, the thinking around it, not the pity party, but I was feeling really sorry for myself. Do you know what? This is what I've realized. I did this that badly. This is what I've learned.
Show people that you're gutted. I'm gutted by this. I am gutted by this.
Yeah.
And then go on to correct it. And then, and if you hide things from yourself or colleagues, they don't go away.
No.
They go underground, and they stay, and they get built up on, and then nothing adds, and nothing adds, nothing adds, nothing adds. And you know what's going to happen. At some point, there's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you're going
volcano.
You're going to explode. And that used to be me. That used to be me.
You know what? We had the last team I was in, we had, I can't remember who, we
found for the hills.
We had these cheap plastic cup. We had trophies for something we got as an initiative in the organisation. We went out and bought these cheap plastic trophies and gave them out for something. I don't remember what now. But we kept one of them. It kind of broke, so we stuck it together with blue tack. We just kept it in the office. And one of us at some point had made a mistake, and it may well have been me. But ultimately, what we decided to do was define this little cup as the official dumbass cup of the office. And you couldn't award it to somebody. You could only self-award it.
Yeah.
But encourage that kind of going, do you know what? I have just ballsed up royally, and oh my God, what have I done? Da, da, da. And you would literally walk to somebody else's desk who'd balled up a week before, pick it up, say, look, you don't deserve this anymore. I'm going to stick it on my desk. And you go and stick it on your desk, and you get the question, oh my God, what's wrong? What can we do?
Yeah.
And do that. And
yeah.
so yeah, my counterpart at one point had basically shredded some disciplinary notes, and at the time hadn't thought that she'd saved the typing up of them yet, and thought she had to stick them all back together with sellotape or something. I'm like, you're going to have some trouble there because it's a cross-cut shredder, so that's going to be possible.
And I like that.
Good luck. They're not even strips; they're little tiny bits. Thankfully, she hadn't typed them up, but she had scanned them. She'd forgotten she'd scanned them. So yeah, so we gave it. She basically self-admitted the dumbass cut because I'm stupid to have shredded them, but I'm also stupid to have forgotten that I scanned them. Oh my God, I'm not so stupid I didn't scan them, but I'm stupid that I forgot I scanned them. So she kept the cup for about a week, and then I did something. I don't remember what it was, but right, I need that back. It's just like, and it bounced around the office every time one of us dropped a hanger, said something stupid, said something to the HRD that she just went, what? He's like, all right, we'll have that cut back now. And it got to a point where actually once the HRD actually came in and took the cut back into her office at one point. And we're just like, what did you do? She's like, I can't tell you, but I
can't tell you, but believe you me, I deserve this cut.
I can't tell you, but I'm going to take the cut for a while. Like, okay. And again, so human, such a lovely thing to
is such a heartwarming story.
It was lovely. I miss that little plastic cup. I really
acknowledgement
do. Yeah.
Of we share this human condition of ballsing up.
And the shared HR experience that it happens even in HR. And yes, the consequences can be.
My goodness, it happens. You cannot avoid it. It simply does not happen. Simply does not happen. And
so is that the title of the next book? You're going to balls up, but it's okay.
I'm going to balls up.
It should be. There's a book in there somewhere.
There's a guy I know who climbs mountains, and he has set up an well, this was several years ago. I don't know if it's still there. It probably might not be, but this was several years ago. He set up a working committee in the House of Commons to examine the place of risk in a healthy society. I thought that's such a fantastic, what is risky health? He did it because he felt that we were becoming over safety conscious, and he's a mountain climber.
Gosh.
And so he takes risks. They are calculated, well-planned risks. And he might die. It's unlikely, but the possibility exists for him to die. But he does everything to ensure that he doesn't. And he loves the risk of climbing a mountain face. And his argument was that we've sanitized our society so much that we're not taking risk, and that entrepreneurship is risk. Going for a promotion is risk. Challenging the status quo thinking is risk. You know what I mean? All these, otherwise, and I think he's right. I think that we need to recognize that when we risk, we run the risk of failure. It's possible for us to fail, but it's better to have risked and failed than not to have risked at all.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's sort of funny thing to say, isn't it? I'm just thinking about so many times we've sat in meetings and someone has clearly, adamantly said, this is the way to go. We're going to do this. And they've got the power, they've got the authority, they've got the strident voice, they've got a nice sound bite. They're using some buzzwords. It all sounds good. But inside your heart, you're going, this is going to fail. This is not going to work. And yet we remain silent.
Don't take the risk in speaking up. Yeah.
And this is how come we end up with the leaders in our organizations that do us down. I heard 2 stories just recently of 2 women who are both senior and both highly intelligent, but they're kind of ops people. They're ops bods. So, and they have achieved big results. And they're looking for new work. And so I was talking about it, and I'm saying, big organizations, not sure. And this one girl said, yeah. She said, I work for the most horrific boss ever, and they have just secured an all singing, all dancing, bells and whistles, amazing job with a leading consulting firm. And she said, and I'm sitting there wondering, how the heck did they get that? Because as far as I'm concerned, they did nothing. They were with us for a year and they did nothing.
But they've got the gift of the gab.
They've got the gift of the gab. They use the right buzzwords. They do. And I'm digressing a bit, aren't I?
Little, but it's yeah. I mean, it was about the two
But I
ladies.
think it's about, in HR, we have got a unique position to speak up
Yeah,
around people issues. Do we? Do we take that risk?
yeah, and you have to ask yourself: is what risk am I taking?
Yes. And am
Ultimately,
I okay to
what's the
fail?
risk if I don't speak up? That's the
What's
biggest
the,
risk, isn't
oh
it? There's
yeah,
a
what's
bigger
the
risk
risk
if
if
you
I don't,
don't say
yeah.
anything.
Well, I know what's going to happen. This kind of bullying environment is going to continue. We're going to continue to demand more and more of our employees without giving them any support.
Yeah.
We're going to have some mistakes starting to happen because we're asking them to do too much in some situations. We certainly don't currently have a culture where someone can put up their hand and say, I made a complete balls up. I've made a mistake. It's going to go under the carpet and it's going to start smelling.
So if you don't speak up and question these things, you remove that gift that you give to yourself of being able to say, I told you so when it does go wrong. When they ignore you and do it anyway, which let's face it, quite often happens, they ignore you and do it anyway. And what you've kind of worried about happening ends up happening and you end up picking the pieces up because you're HR and that's where it goes. You at
That's
least have the
okay. That's
luxury at that
okay.
point to say, do you know what? I knew
Yeah,
this was going to happen. This is why I raised this.
yeah, exactly. Now, if you do it right, if you've got a decent boss who is a human being, but is okay about learning, you've got to
Yes,
remember that your boss is a human being. Actually, that's
exactly.
very important. They're not perfect. He's a human being, but their mind is open. I've done it with a business guy, and I sowed some ideas in. I said, "Oh, I see where you're coming from with that idea, and I certainly absolutely get what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, I agree with you. I've got a concern about this. I've got a concern about
Have
that.
you thought about X?
My fear is that this will happen." And they go, "Oh, no, 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 no." And anyway, they've made their mind up. So basically, they don't want to hear about fears and stuff like that.
Mm.
So, and I go, "Okay, well, let's go ahead and see what happens with it." And then they go away, and then your little fear pops up. And then next time you say, I've got a fear about that, they listen a bit better now. Going, okay. And then you get them coming to you earlier going, so I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. I just want your viewpoint
What
on
am
it.
I missing? It's when they say the words, what am I missing? And they're
Yes.
looking to you to fill the gap. You're hallelujah, yes. And
Now
you don't
you've got,
actually do that. You just sit there very sweetly smile and go, let me ever think about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let
Now
me ponder that for a while.
it takes time to build trust with someone.
It does.
You've got to be on their side. You have to be seen to be on their side. You have to agree with the ultimate aim that they're aiming for. I mean, if it's modern day slavery, you wouldn't be agreeing to that. You'd be out, but you know what I mean? You have to agree to what they're, and you have to show your agreement to that. I'm with you on that. The only thing you are debating is the semantics about how you get there.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. So the purpose sounds right. The goal seems okay. The method, that's what we're thinking
And
about.
then you start saying, I think there's an easier way of getting it without anyone realizing that they're doing it. And they go, oh, what do you mean? Well, okay, and then you present your idea
Yeah.
about what you're going to do. And of course, another big problem we've got in our workplaces is everyone's after the short-term thing. And often it takes a year, 18 months to build something and start seeing a return of it, and then 4-5 years before it's embedded into the organization. And
Well, that's it. And
who they
also,
are. It's
you're
just
right.
who they
And
are.
trust is the same, isn't it? And you've got
Yes.
it's a whole other conversation to go into how you can have trust straight away because you can trust the position. You can trust I trust an airline pilot to get me somewhere safely. I don't have to meet him. I don't have to know his family or his background or anything like that. I trust that he's done his qualifications. He's not drunk and he's got me on the plane and he's not going to crash it. But would I trust him? I know with my dogs for a weekend? Hell no. It's just like that's not something that's going to happen. In HR, they trust the qualification, they trust the position, but ultimately your advice on matters that are that touch on the ego, that touch on the plans that you've made as a director or a leader, that sort of trust takes time. Like you say, you've got to go through those experiences and get it right, get it wrong, and then think, okay, so yeah, maybe I should listen to Sue more, maybe listen to Rachel more, maybe I
The
should listen to
the
Charlie more.
problem I see with HR departments who aren't accepting that they're human and are still seeking perfection is that they process and tick box everything. And they create a rule book that's that thick, that no one reads because no one has got the time to read. And they try and do best practice on everything. Not against best practice at all, and they try and control it into perfection. And that's never going to happen. Because you've got the infinite variable, you're dealing with the infinite variable, and that is a human being.
A group of human beings, lots of human beings potentially. So yes, it's
and they're all different. They have commonalities, but they are all unique.
Exactly.
And and the only way to handle a human being is to recognize your own humanity, and to speak to them as one human to another human.
Love it. That's a lovely, lovely, lovely place to close.
Only way.
I like that. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant. I think we could talk for hours. I know we can.
Yeah.
I know we can. We would if I didn't have limitations on how much I could record, how much storage I've got, and how long people will actually listen for before they tune out. But I think actually there's been so much richness in here. For people in management, for people in HR teams, and I think this particular podcast isn't just going to be about people in HR. Obviously, it's not. So no offense to the Freds, because that's, some of you are great, obviously. And ultimately, it may, the title of this podcast may yet be "You're going to balls it up," and that's okay. I think that's probably a very, very valid point to.
Yes, completely.
Before we close off, you do obviously get an opportunity for a shameless plug for your services, Sue. So where can we find you? Where can we get your book? Because it sounds fascinating.
Okay, the book is on Amazon, How to Fire Staff So They Say Thank You. So they thank you. It's the result I got for myself. It's the result that clients get. You can find me at conversewell.com. I run management courses online and in person, and I do coaching, and I also help organizations and teams create those cultures with all those little sparks of energy.
Oh, that fizzy buzz that you get.
That fizzy buzz.
Great. I love fizzy buzz. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sue. I will make sure that your social contacts and links and everything are in the show notes. That'll be your website, your LinkedIn connections, that kind of stuff, so that folks can get hold of you should they want to, or when they want to, because let's face it, they should want to. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. If you do like these and you're liking this series, do hit subscribe wherever you listen on various podcast platforms, wherever you get this from. Obviously there will be more coming down the line, so I look forward to you hearing this next time.